Civil rights groups and activists are ramping up their fight against voting restrictions nationwide, especially in Georgia, where the Justice Department is now suing the state. Federal officials accuse Georgia's new election law of violating parts of the Voting Rights Act. They say that it takes aim at black voters by denying them equal access to the ballot. The lawsuit also invokes a provision that would place Georgia's elections under federal supervision. Many GOP-led states have introduced or enacted tough voting restrictions following former President Trump's loss in the 2020 election. Democrats and activists urge these measures discriminate against black voters and attack the core of our democracy. Attorney General Merrick Garland issued a sharp warning to Republican officials.
This lawsuit is the first of many steps we are taking to ensure that all eligible voters can cast a vote, that all lawful votes are counted, and that every voter has access to accurate information. Where we believe the civil rights of Americans have been violated, we will not hesitate to act.
So for more on this, I want to bring in NAACP President and CEO Derrick Johnson to talk about the state of things now. Thanks so much for joining us. I want to ask you your take on the Justice Department's lawsuit. Do you think it goes far enough? Because, some have suggested that it fails to address certain provisions, particularly provisions that allow Republican officials to lead local election boards. What's your take on the lawsuit?
Well, I'm concerned, based on last week's Supreme Court decision, whether or not the tools necessary to really address vote discrimination will still be available to the Justice Department. Remember, this lawsuit was filed before the Supreme Court decision in the Arizona case, which essentially limits the tool of Section 2. This Supreme Court, from their ruling in the Shelby Holder ruling to today, last week's ruling, really have weakened the Voting Rights Act. And I am extremely concerned because obviously Republicans are seeking to choose voters as opposed to them expanding their platform to attract voters and want to limit access to voting. That's not a democracy.
What is your message to the Biden administration? Using the Justice Department in this way, I think is sort of one of the tools available. But we know that there are two voting rights acts that are kind of sitting in Congress right now, the John Lewis Act and H.R. 1. And I guess my question to you is, do you think that the Harris government is doing enough to throw their support behind these two acts, to push Congress to be more assertive? Do you want to see more out of the administration when it comes to protecting voters' access to the ballot box?
Well, this really comes down to a procedural rule in the Senate. Can we get past a rule that was long used by segregationists to impede progress? We are at a state in our country where we have to expand protections for those individuals who are legitimate citizens and also entitled to exercise their right to vote and those votes be counted. And so we're looking at the Senate. As a 50-50 Senate, you have a procedural rule that's blocking substantive protections. That's key. And whether it's the John Lewis Act, for the People Act, or something new, we must pursue a course of action that afford all citizens their right to vote and their ability to do so unimpeded with vote suppression methods.
Speaking of Congress and priorities, you have been working with Congress to pull together some sort of police reform act. We've blown past deadlines now. You've been involved in negotiations, though. Where do things stand with Congress? Are we any closer to reaching some sort of deal at the federal level, at least, that will see the way we police in this country change for the better?
Well, but I've said all along that I'm glad there's a table where members of the Senate from both sides of the aisle are sitting down and negotiating an outcome. I'm really frustrated at the exact same time that if the law enforcement agencies that have caused the harm and the problem are able to dictate the terms. This bill is about people. This bill is about increasing the confidence in law enforcement agencies across the country. Many officers agree that there needs to be accountability, but we cannot allow the most extreme police organizations to dictate the terms. And I hope that as members continue to sit at the table and work through this very hard issue, that we put aside partisanship, that we not allow the very agencies or individuals and labor unions that are extreme to dictate terms so community and peoples can feel safe. We can elevate the profile of law enforcement in this country, and we can move forward in a manner in which consistent with other developed nations. No other nations have the level of police violence that we have in this country. No other country have the level of gun violence that we do. We need to address this holistically with public policy and not allow a minority of police officers to dictate the terms.
Hey, Derrick, while I have you here, I think I'll just ask you about something else, too, that we've been discussing a lot coming out of Capitol Hill and the White House. So we've had this kind of debate about the infrastructure bill, right? The president came out and said there's a bipartisan agreement, but it did not include what he talked about earlier as the human infrastructure, support for things like child care, job development. These are portions of the infrastructure bill that everyone benefits from, but certainly the African American community would benefit. It seems to have been separated out now, and there's sort of an urging that, you know, the American Family Act be supported. But I wonder if you were a little disappointed to hear that negotiations led to the human infrastructure portion being separated from kind of the bridges and roads and that sort of stuff, and what you want the president and Congress to know about how important that other aspect is.
Well, we have to invest in people. We have to invest in the ability of people to progress and look at the future of economies. You know, over the last 100+ years, much of our political debate has been around who gets taxed, who's not taxed, and how those tax dollars are spent. And we've seen corporate America be able to capture tax dollars, reduce their tax obligations, and really profit as a result of average taxpayer Americans across the country, across all walks of life, across communities. And it's time for us to invest in our human capital. Think about the mother and the father who's providing for their family. They work hard every day, 12 hours a day. They need child care because in many ways they're underpaid. We have not raised the minimum wage in over 15 years. It's been the same, but yet corporate profits still go up. The ability of corporations to pull off the tax coffers for their benefit, the amount of money we've given to corporation an incentive, the amount of tax breaks we have provided. At some point, we have to invest in individuals. That's not about race. That's about the quality of life for all of us. And every American should be outraged with this divided Senate that's impeding progress at every turn. If you have the leader of one of the parties to say their goal is to stop this president from being successful, that's not how we should govern. We should be governing, say, our goal is to make sure we get the best quality out of government possible because hardworking Americans deserve more.
One more topic for you. Sorry it's like I'm changing the channel on you, but you keep coming back with really interesting answers. Earlier on CBS This Morning, we had Nikole Hannah-Jones on, just to remind people, she's a journalist, New York Times journalist. She spearheaded the 1619 Project, which was a landmark series of essays and articles looking at the way slavery shaped the outcome of this country. And it sort of asked the question, would this be the same country without slavery? Let's take a good hard look at this. It also made her a target for many critics and people who are choosing to use race as a distraction. I'll say that. So the recent controversy was that the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, did not offer a tenured position. This morning she announced that she will be going to Howard University. I just want to get your take on sort of how things unfolded in her announcement.
Well, first of all, I think we are at a low point in this country when institutions of higher learning, research institutions, began to allow the political dialogue dictate true academic excellence. What Nikole produced was a true historical account that any historian worth their salt would agree with. No one has agreed with the facts that she revealed in that project. And it's really important for us as Americans to really embrace all of our history, not just revisionist history. And so what the University of North Carolina did was actually shocking to many. They reversed course, and as she has the right to do, considering the controversy, she said she refused to take the tenure position. And I really celebrate the fact that she's going to Howard University. You know, Howard University is one of our leading HBCUs, historically Black colleges in the country. And we've always led in terms of developing young critical thinkers. And so her addition to that faculty is going to speak volumes in terms of allowing our young people to go to institution of higher learning where true critical thinking is being taught. Facts matter. History is important in order for us to progress as a nation in this global reality.
Yeah, and I will encourage people, if you have not read or listened to the podcast associated with the project, you should do it. Because you're right, it's not about revisionist history. It's just about history. And that's not just Black history. That's American history. I think many would benefit. Right. Derrick Johnson, thanks for letting me throw all kinds of questions your way. Really appreciate you spending time with us.
Always enjoyed to come on. Thank you.